Thanks, Ira, and thank you, Krista, and thank you to each of you for taking the time out of your day and your schedules to join us for today's webinar. I'm Jess Guerrier, the Director of Learning and Practice with Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, and happy to be working with Ira Feldman, our founder and managing director, to present this next webinar. Let me just introduce a few ideas about Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, and toward the end of today's webinar I can give you a little bit more information about our current and future plans and opportunities for you to become involved as our faculty and fellow sustainability leaders in some of the things that we have coming up for sustainability faculty and institutions. SCC recognizes that institutions and academic sustainability leaders are seeking a responsive and cohesive entity to address the curriculum and professional development needs of a dynamic, diverse, and intellectually rich community that's being called up to serve for the greater global good. We envision a consortium that builds our collective capacity as educators and change agents to improve the perception, modeling, and teaching of sustainability, and serves as a generator of principles, practices, and shared resources, and thus moves the education aspect of higher education sustainability up to and beyond campus operations. So for more information about Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, you can check out our website, curriculumforsustainability.org. And stick around until the end of the webinar today, as I mentioned, for some opportunities for you professionally coming up in the next academic year. It's also my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Krista Hiser, today's webinar speaker. Dr. Hiser is an Associate Professor of English at Kapiolani Community College in Hawaii and teacher of developmental and college-level writing in the context of eco-composition. Her dissertation in educational administration at UHM focused on student perspectives on sustainability in the curriculum, and she serves as CAPCC's sustainability committee, and she is the faculty service learning and sustainability coordinator. So Krista, so great to have you with us today, and I will now have Ira hand the presentation role over to you.
Thank you, Jess. View, slideshow. All right. Is my beautiful Hawaii scrapbook visible? Are you seeing my screen?
I see the small box containing the scrapbook.
Small box. You don't see my screen?
I can see your screen. It looks like the presentation is in a small box within that screen. You may need to switch over to a different mode of presentation.
Showing main screen. Main screen. Oh. How's that?
Beautiful.
Okay. Well, I wanted to start with this beautiful scrapbook. I know people are snowed in today, and it's snowy and cold a lot of places, and I'm glad you could come on a little visit to Hawaii, where we have rainbows, we have beaches, beautiful, magnificent creatures and diversity, glorious sunsets filled with hula. Oops, no, we're not advancing. And where our, sorry, I'm going to move this, where our students at the University of Hawaii, it's just a magical place, Hawaii, and it's just a magical time right now. A lot of the sustainability aspects in the University of Hawaii system that I'm going to talk about today are student-driven and designed with students in mind, and they're really at the forefront and doing some amazing things. We have over here student Joy Valenti. He's designed a building material made out of albizia, which is a really aggressive, invasive tree we're dealing with here in Hawaii. And we also have an open student design challenge called Make the Alawai Awesome. And this is open to students from elementary school all the way through graduate school to submit their ideas for one of our problematic watersheds. We have student leaders who are taking part in this work with such a sense of joy, and I really try to keep them in all my presentations and always at the front of my mind. We also have a very supportive Board of Regents right now that divested the university's endowment from fossil fuels last year. It really took me by surprise. So right now is just a really exciting time, full of really great synergies, which is what I hope is the main point that comes across today, is the way sustainability designation can synergize kind of bottom-up and top-down aspects from faculty, students, administrators, and the community. We also have this different scrapbook happening, of course. We have some really intensive development of high-end condos coming up in urban Honolulu. It really contrasts with a persistent, intractable problem of homelessness, which brings the social justice aspects of our sustainability work really to the forefront. It's just really visible every day here. We are somewhat of a canary in the coal mine for sea level rise, and need to also be thinking about and preparing for peoples in the Pacific who will be displaced by sea level rise. And that, again, that sort of social, moral, and ethical issue surrounding climate change. This is a picture of our H-Power floor, our waste to energy facility that deals with 1.6 million tons of trash per year. That's all of Oahu's trash, and then also all of the tourists. So we have this kind of extra waste burden that we deal with. We have up in the top, it's a picture of the island of Kauai and some pesticide issues and a lot of activism around pesticides, GMO, and food issues. And our food insecurity, based on the fact that about 90% of our food is imported, and then in the top corner, representing our $51 billion a year addiction to imported fossil fuel, which is 33 barrels of oil for every man, woman, and child in Hawaii. Underlying all of this is the history of Native Hawaiians and the university's responsibility to serve and represent Native Hawaiians and to truly be an indigenous serving institution. So it's this is the scrapbook of our wicked problems. And then let's just remind ourselves where Hawaii is in the most remote place on the planet. This is a weather shot from the time period last year when we had 4 hurricanes sort of circling Hawaii, and increased hurricanes and of greater intensity is another impact that we're preparing for when we think about climate change. So for me, this whole S designation, today's whole topic is really driven by 2 things that I hear the most often from our faculty and from various stakeholders. One is that every student who graduates or attends University of Hawaii needs to understand climate change and its impacts on Hawaii and their future. And at the same time, they need to understand the uniqueness of place, not just Hawaii as an island chain, but place their specific island, place their specific ahupua'a or land division, the specific moku in which that campus, that college is situated. And I think these principles apply to any place because, you know, Florida has different climate impacts and different sense of place. New York, the Midwest. We all can think about these 2 guiding sort of goals throughout the presentation. So I'm going to be talking about our sustainability designation and the 4 broad benefits that we have gained from implementing a sustainability designation across the University of Hawaii system. The main one is an interdisciplinary dialogue. I've taught first-year composition for almost 20 years, and these are the most interesting conversations I have had with faculty in the sciences, in the arts, in the social sciences, in math, in humanities, in healthcare, in carpentry, in geology. Faculty are really engaging with each other around these issues of sustainability, climate change, what it means for our teaching. It really becomes a form of peer-to-peer professional development. How do we maintain currency in our disciplines when things are shifting so rapidly? So it's a professional development for faculty. The S designation makes visible what I believe is already happening in our classrooms. The heart of higher education happens in the classroom interaction between faculty and students. And making those sustainability classrooms more visible to students who are interested in sustainability is another thing that the S designation does for us. And lastly, what I'll talk about is the way it helps us to transform the curriculum and achieve curricular coherence. So a little overview of today's webinar. I'm very happy to be your host and talk about the who, what, where, and then spend most of the time on the what and the how of what we include in our criteria for our sustainability designation, and then how we implement it and how you might implement at a college level, or if you have the opportunity to work with partner colleges or as a system the way we are, I think that has some additional benefits. I also include some links here to our University of Hawaii Office for Sustainability webpage. Everything I talk about will be archived there as well. We have a sustainability policy that I'll talk about. And if your college doesn't have a driving policy, I really recommend creating one. It's been a real accelerator in our curriculum efforts. This semester, we produced a handbook on implementing a sustainability designation. It has all the nitty-gritty details from how we put it in our banner system to what it means on transcripts, and all these little details are in there. I'll talk a little bit about our work with Censor Hawaii and have a link to a video there, which maybe we have time for at the end and maybe not. And then my contact information. And I do have a new title in addition to what Jess shared. I'm very fortunate this year to be serving as the University of Hawaii Systems Sustainability Curriculum Coordinator. And that's really what I'm sharing with this presentation. So welcome. This is Mr. Matthew Lynch. He's our Sustainability Coordinator. He handles all the other aspects, and I work with him on curriculum aspect. This is Dr. Albie Miles. Albie is putting together a bachelor's degree in sustainable community food systems, and his work has been part of the sustainability designation. And then I also want to mention Dr. Chip Fletcher, who in my opinion is the top climate change researcher in the world because he's researching in the most interesting location. And I mentioned these two gentlemen because they recorded some lectures for our faculty, which are archived on our sustainability site. One is about the state of food in Hawaii, and the other is about climate change impacts in Hawaii. And I thought those might be interesting for this audience. And they're also an example of that peer-to-peer professional development. I invited them in and I said, just break it down for us. You know, what is going on as faculty across the disciplines? What do we need to know about climate change? And then I also want to acknowledge Dr. Manulani Meyer, who is the Director of Indigenous Education at our West Oahu campus, and her work in Indigenous epistemologies and her tremendous patience in educating and helping us all bring together this sort of meeting of indigenous wisdoms and the global sustainability dialogue. So those are some of my colleagues whose work I try to represent in this presentation. This is the University of Hawaii system. We have a massive presence across the Hawaiian Islands. We have 55,000 students that we're interacting with every year, granting 11,000 degrees or certificates, teaching 5,503 courses every semester, taught by, depending how you count, somewhere over 2,000 faculty members with a ratio of 14:1. This is a lot of brain power working on sustainability or potentially working for sustainability. 25,000 student semester hours. So if we look at the University of Hawaii system as an energy force and an entity of intellectual research and innovation and work, I really believe that we can contribute to some of our statewide goals for sustainability. Higher education has traditionally been interested in three things in my experience: student success, enrollment and graduation, workforce and jobs. And what we need to do is weave sustainability through all of these things. Some concerns about declining enrollment could have to do with declining relevance. And sustainability ensures that we are giving students information that they feel is relevant to their future, and it also helps us to train students for jobs that don't exist right now. We need to reconceive the way we think about workforce and jobs and what we're preparing students for. The planet does not need more successful people. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite people. I want to take a minute and just align with some of the thought leaders who've informed this work. I really credit David Orr with starting this conversation in higher education. In 2001, Derek Owens published Composition and Sustainability, which was a big influence on me and was my entry point. He observed that every student in the United States, college student, takes Composition 1, first year composition. So it's a great place to introduce ecological literacy. And it remains a really important work. The work of Deborah Rowe, who's also involved with the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, her work in policy, her interest in community colleges, and in particular for me, her work around defining change agent skills and the kind of co-curricular things like self-efficacy that students need, the quality students need, has been really important work. This work by Fumio Kagawa about cognitive dissonance in students' perceptions of sustainability, where that comes from and what that means. I think this is a really important aspect to look at, the aspect of cognitive dissonance and how we might inadvertently create it and how to design curriculum to avoid it. Arnav Vik, we were very fortunate to have at our last Sustainability Summit as a keynote, and the synthesis that he's provided for key competencies in sustainability is just really incredible work, and we are working to integrate those broader essential learning outcomes for sustainability. Leith Sharp we had at our summit the year before, and she contributed this idea of the dual operating system, which really informs how our system Office of Sustainability supports the hierarchical, or works with the hierarchical organization of multiple campuses to catalyze a rapid diffusion of sustainability across the curriculum. Really grateful to Leith Sharp for that. And also to our hui on Ike Hawaii. This is a group that I mentioned with Manulani Meyer that is really advising us, and we're really working out together, what does it mean to embrace indigenous wisdom? What is the role of indigenous expertise in sustainability? And coming to understand these values is more challenging and more difficult than it seems, and is also incredibly deeply rewarding, and we really feel there's something here of great benefit for sustainability curriculum. These are all the people that we work with. This is at our last Sustainability Curriculum Summit, so this is all just to emphasize the importance of buy-in from the ground up. Everybody's perspective is very important, very valuable on this, and we've done some just really creative, empowered, fun work. And I also want to emphasize the need to accelerate that work, to include a lot of perspectives and also just keep moving forward. As I was preparing this talk, I was thinking about Thomas Kuhn's book and the idea of paradigm shift, which is something we kind of bandy about now. We talk about paradigm shifts all the time. This optical illusion was in the Wikipedia definition for paradigm shift, and I thought that's really what it is. You know, is it a rabbit or is it a duck? Is it a rabbit or is it a duck? What do you see? Rabbit? Duck. When, like last week, we were looking at an invasive grass on one of our campuses. And how do we look at that grass? Is it our enemy, or is it a resource? Is it a stored energy biomass? So much of sustainability and what we need to teach is in shifting our mindset from rabbit to duck, or duck to rabbit, as it may be. And same with our institutions. I have been stuck in seeing our institutions as too slow, too hierarchical, too stodgy, too big of boat to be equipped for this problem. But maybe they're not. You know, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a duck. And in fact, institutions of higher education are going to be awesome at this. So then when I look at our Hawaiian Island chain and I think about those 55,000 students and those 2,000 faculty and the courses that they're teaching, I suddenly started to see it as a giant brain, and each campus and each course and each faculty member's expertise is an electrode, a node in that brain lighting up, and what we're doing with our S designation is rewiring our institutional collective brain for sustainability. Here's our campuses. Technically, we have 2 programs in sustainability. One is a bachelor's degree in sustainability science management, managed by Professor Tim Botkin at Mauo College. So this is a 4-year degree in sustainability. We also have the new bachelor's degree in sustainable community food system that I mentioned at our West Oahu campus. So it looks like that's all we have is 2 programs in sustainability. But when we look closer, things start to pop up. We have a brand new renewable energy certificate on our Hilo campus. At our flagship Manoa campus, we have College of Tropical Agriculture, Life Sciences, an environmental law program, School of Ocean, Earth Science and Technology, Future Studies, Geology. Every department on campus is interacting with sustainability. It's just not visible. Our community colleges have lots of programs like carpentry, automotive, HVAC, and they too are interacting with sustainability curriculum and an S designation. What does that mean for sustainable building? What are they teaching in those programs? Every campus offers an AA degree in Hawaiian Studies. And where else can you actually get a degree in Polynesian voyaging? So again, this is a big piece of the puzzle for us. If you follow Hawaii at all, you've probably heard of the Malama Honua worldwide voyage of Hokulea. It's a traditional voyaging canoe that has circumnavigated the globe using traditional celestial navigation. This fellow in the dark shirt is Nainoa Thompson, and I heard Nainoa Thompson speak in 2003. he spoke to the faculty. And he was talking about, he was just envisioning this worldwide voyage, and he was talking about how difficult it was going to be, and that there might be pirates and people might get sick on the boat, and what would they do for their food. And you know, it was just a massive effort of coordination. And he asked some questions about the purpose of higher education. And one of the things he asked is, how will higher education be different for Hokulea having sailed? And now they're getting ready to come home. Hokulea is returning in June, and I want to be able to answer for him the question of how higher education is different. The other gentleman in the photo is our president, David Lasner, who with a swipe of his iPad, he's an IT guy, signed our executive policy and sustainability. I want to emphasize the importance of a policy like this. This policy specifically says that the university is going to integrate sustainability education initiatives in the curriculum. Well, how do we do that? And how do we know if we're doing that? What this policy does is empower faculty to do this work in the curriculum, and it helps it to count for faculty dossiers and things like that. So President Lasner brought together a group of faculty. It included STEM faculty, sustainability faculty, and the Polynesian voyaging crew. And he brought us together and he said, you know, you science people, sustainability people, traditional Hawaiians, you're all talking to me about the same thing. What are you talking about, and how can you bring your conversations together? And at that meeting, a new word was introduced. A new word was introduced in the Hawaiian language. And the word is Mauō. Mauō. And right after the word was introduced, we had a little earthquake, and the earth went, and it was really quite a moment. So we have this word now, the perpetuation of well-being. And I just think it's such an interesting shift in the way we look at sustainability, right? Moving from sustainability to thrivability, to ho'o Mauō. So let's get into kind of the technical aspects of our sustainability designation. This is what an S designation is. It's simply designated courses, mostly in our general education curriculum, that relate to issues of sustainability in all its dimensions. We always emphasize this kind of 4 pillars definition when we talk about sustainability. So we've been doing a benchmark report, and this is a soft number, but it's the first time I'm going to share this number and say we have 206 sustainability designated courses or sections across our system. That's 206 who've gone through a formal process to obtain this designation in a rigorous and meaningful way. There's probably 200 more that are S-ready or could receive the designation, and then there's probably 400 more that just aren't even aware yet that we're doing this. The S designation comes right out of the ASHE STARS framework. So I want to talk a little bit about ASHE. There are 794 ASHE STARS schools. And you see the one little dot out here in the Pacific. That's actually not the University of Hawaii, that's HPU. So University of Hawaii, we don't technically participate in ASHE STARS, but we still use the framework, and it's of such value what ASHE has created with ASHE STARS. We use both sustainability focused. These are usually thematic courses where 60% or more of the content focuses on sustainability, and we also use sustainability related, or what the ASHE manual calls courses that include sustainability. And I really appreciate that, you know, the goal is not for every course to be about sustainability. Just because a course mentions trees or water, is not automatically a sustainability course. Sustainability courses, sustainability curriculum is about that intersection of the environment and well-being, or the environment and the economy, or culture and the environment. Sustainability curriculum is about building that neural net for our understandings of sustainability. So what do you do with your S designation? So there's at least 794 people who have an S designation somewhere in their job that they're trying to figure out, what can you do with your S designation? You can use it internally, or you can make it public. Some colleges use it to create a requirement, and some use it to build a certificate or a minor. So this is an example of Santa Clara University, the way they're tracking their curriculum with the S designation. And I like their reporting. I'd like to do something similar to this. It lets you know which departments are most engaged with sustainability, and it just lets you know where your curriculum is at. How do we know what's going on in our classrooms? We want to be looking at sustainability both as a value and as a discipline. This is the way Gary Dirks from ASU put it in a recent conversation. Sustainability as a value infused in the curriculum, and then also as its own discipline of sustainability science and degree programs and so forth. So we are in this looking at how do we use it publicly? How do we make it of service to students? And I think would be a really interesting conversation to have maybe at next year's ASHE meeting is like, what's next with your S designation, these 794 STARS schools? What does that information mean to you, and how can we get more out of the work that we put into tracking the curriculum for ASHE STARS? It's taken us a long time to build this designation. My entry point was in 2001, and I put that up there because in 2001, we didn't even have recycling. So if we think we're not moving on this, like everything has changed. You know, is it a rabbit or is it a duck? Everything has changed. So I made my students collect recycling and analyze it and everything, and they really didn't like doing that very much. And we had our first conversation about sustainability as a system in 2008. And we were literally like 30 faculty sitting around a big table going, well, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you? You know, and now we're talking about a system-wide S designation. Started with that first dialogue. And we had some follow-up meetings, and one of the first steps was just tracking the assets on each campus. Who had recycling programs? Who had student clubs? And, you know, just getting a sense of what is probably exploding on your campuses with bike club and garden clubs and campus gardens, and then what's happening in the classroom. We see all these things happening on campus, and we don't see what's happening in the classroom. So that's where we need to be catching up. ASHE STARS came around 2011. At least that's when I did the ASHE STARS training, because I thought for sure we'd sign on with ASHE STARS. And then I did some research using student focus groups for dissertation projects, sustainability perspectives of students as stakeholders in the curriculum. And that research, which I'll talk a tiny bit about, informed our sustainability designation. In 2013, we had our first state summit. In 2013, we also introduced our first strategic plan item. It was item F4. So for a year, all I talked about was F4 and how are we going to get there. And I'll share with you how our strategic planning language has also evolved. And then 2015, we got the policy, and today the S designation is really taking off. So I'm sharing this timeline, one, to show that this takes patience. This has been a grassroots effort. It takes a lot of communication, telling the story and the stories and talking about courses and curriculum and what students learn. Patience, stick-to-itiveness, and I also share this timeline because I really want to see us increase the sense of urgency on this. Colleges have got to not be talking about sustainability in the curriculum, but really taking a hard look and deciding what it is we want to be about. I have a climate denier story, and I actually am grading final papers right now. And my students, for their final paper, they have to interview friends and family members about climate change. And I'm really struck by how our students, they get caught in between these perspectives on climate change. Climate deniers are everywhere, and we need to think about what it is that we're teaching and how we deal with that perspective, especially as we go into this next administration. In my mind, science, we are a Research One institution and a science-based institution. And in my mind, scientists tell us they are not going to debate climate change. And so therefore, there's just really not a room for this perspective. I'm all for freedom of thought and freedom of speech, but there's just not room for this when you combine with the urgency of what we're talking about. So I'm going to share my experience because it's about coherence. I was proposing my research study and in a whole different graduate department because I wanted to study the environmental psychology and the impact of global environmental issues on adolescent thought. And my advisor told me she didn't think that would be a very good idea. And I said, why? I think it's a great study. And she said, well, you'd have to start by convincing your committee that climate change was real. And, you know, it just blew my mind. Like, what? Why would I have to do that? So it's really real. And I think my experience is just an example of, like, coherence. What are students learning? It's a very complex world that they're inheriting, and they need to be getting a coherent picture of that world. So this is the study that I did. I used focus group methodology, and I interviewed students about global environmental issues, and then I looked at their engagement with sustainability. Were they really interested in sustainability, high engagement, or were they, you know, didn't really care about it, not their thing, kind of detached attitude about it? And then I looked and I talked with them about their behaviors. Light green behavior, you know, recycling is usually considered light green, turning off the water, to more dark green behaviors like changing where you live, how you travel, or becoming a vegan or something like that. And this has really stuck with me as something we need to think about, that students come at sustainability from very different ways. A student who's here in a sustainability habitus, these are our student leaders. These are the students that we see in sustainability on campus. The students we don't see are the ones down here in quadrant 3. And I called this the karmic retribution. These are students with detached attitude and weak behaviors. So they're not practicing sustainability and they're not interested in sustainability. And their comments are really scary because they say things like, well, you know, Mother Nature's going to do what Mother Nature's going to do, and we deserve it because, you know, we ruined the world, and so what are you going to do? And we need to understand that in order to teach to that. These papers that I'm grading right now about climate change, it's really concerning to me. Students either, if they don't get the whole picture, that's a problem. They don't understand the science, and even after spending a semester on it, sometimes they're still talking about the ozone layer. I'm like, no, that's not really it. And then also the way it can it can go bad and they get overwhelmed. Like, how do we teach this without giving them that overwhelm? This quadrant of dissonance, I mentioned Kagawa's work, is quite common. Students will say they care, probably faculty, a lot of people will say they care, but not really change their behaviors. How do we confront that in the classroom? And then, most interesting of all, this quadrant 1, students who garden and ride their bike and might have these behaviors, but they don't really identify with or care about, sustainability as a thing. And those students are coming at it from a sociocultural perspective. They ride a bike because, they just don't have money, or they participate in a garden because that's their culture. And so we need to understand where students are coming from in order to meet them in our curriculum. So my point is the S designation helps us indicate that this is not an easy thing for faculty to do. Just because you talk about water or trees or food in your class does not mean that you're going to be effectively contributing to this sustainability brain that we're all co-creating. Every student relates differently. Students describe a roller coaster when we talk about environment. Like, how many times have students seen this picture of the bird with the plastic lighters? How many times have students seen the movie Food Inc. or Bag It? We take them on a roller coaster ride when we don't work together. So the S designation helps us create coherent curriculum. If they're watching Bag It in my class, then maybe they shouldn't watch it in your class too, or vice versa. If my students are calculating a carbon footprint and then they come to your class, that's helpful if you know that I did that. So we need to talk to each other about what students are doing in first-year classes and in second-year classes and in upper division classes. Where do we introduce the severity of the issues? When is it too soon? I feel we need to introduce the solutions-oriented curriculum first, get them involved in the solutions and the movement, and then bit by bit layer in the complexity and the severity of the problems. Scare tactics are just not effective at all, even though I find it kind of scary sometimes. Students said to me that, I said, are you learning about sustainability in your classes? And they would say, oh, no. And then they would say, oh, well, except, Miss, she likes to go on about the plastic bottles and so on. And faculty will always teach their values in the classroom. So faculty are teaching sustainability, but it's come out of the sidebars in the textbook, and it's now become a chapter. And sometimes sustainability is the whole textbook. So how are we bringing sustainability out of the sidebar in our classrooms? Students need to participate in solutions. I'm a big fan of service learning. I use service learning in my classes, but there's lots and lots of different ways to do this. And it's very important that we learn about climate fatigue, sustainability fatigue, which can lead to denial. Higher education is really a chance for students to rewire their brains around sustainability and what they need to think about when they think about their future. Taking the effort to integrate with campus and with community is the best way to reduce that cognitive dissonance. And sustainability practitioners are always talking about campus as a living, learning laboratory. That's so important. Involve classes in what's happening on campus. And I also think that when faculty work in the community, that's where students get their messages and their opinions and their interests and their practices, is really from the community. So when faculty have an opportunity to be involved with the community, it's extremely productive. Again, this roller coaster ride, that's what I mean by coherence, is not taking students on this up and down about climate change and sustainability, but instead crafting a solutions-oriented curriculum. I'm going to take a breath here and just remind everybody that about the chat screen, and if you have questions, when we're almost to the end here, I'm going to go through some of the nitty-gritty stuff about our S designation, and all of this I'd be happy to talk with you more later, or to answer questions about if you have specific questions about how your college is doing this. You can put those in the chat box. Okay, so our goals, I'm only going to touch on the green points. The S designation makes our course offerings more visible. Students hear about sustainability, they're asking for it, we just help them find it. I know this is happening in our classrooms, we're just helping them find it. Most of our S designation has been focused in general education, but our career and technical ed courses are also integrating sustainability, and some of the S designated gen ed courses can be really productive preparing students for those CTE fields and working with the CTE courses. And that's healthcare, that's technology, that's all the construction academy, HVAC, you know, that touches on every career field. S designation helps us get at place-based real-world problem solving, and is just an effective benchmark for setting strategic plan goals and our climate action plan documentation. A few more goals that we have with this program is building in 2-year, 4-year pathways. A benefit of having a system-wide definition, or at least a community college 4-year coherence to an S designation, is that it gives students more of a pathway, which helps with their transfer. We give students and faculty some common vocabulary, just like all of us on this call have a common vocabulary, because S designation kind of was introduced by ASHE. It gives faculty and students some common vocabulary to talk about sustainability. It really supports localized issues and a localized framework. And so we have a coherent way to implement, but it's also very tailored to each campus. And of course, every college would tailor to their own system. If you were starting from scratch and wanted to introduce a sustainability designation, maybe you can find yourself on this sort of flow chart. The first step is to designate a committee or an advisory board with some relationship to your faculty senate, right? The curriculum is in the purview of the faculty, so faculty need to, you know, really be driving this, working with sustainability coordinators, and really actively participating in conversations like this one with the Sustainability Curriculum Consortium, because this is our responsibility. You can do an inventory of the courses you think are sustainability, and get those faculty to apply first. So, you know, you practice and start out with the faculty who are closest at their starting point. We use an intake protocol, which I'm going to share. That's what the asterisk means. And then you can do something with the courses. And that, I think, is an interesting question. Do you use them internally? Do you share it with students? We've created a website that lists all the S designation courses just to help students find them. And then we regularly review them, and we're just targeting some assessment of the sustainability learning outcomes. And then our sort of next leading edge here on our work is how can we make all our S designation courses add up to something, to a system-wide certificate, something equivalent to a minor. That's my goal. These are the actual questions that we ask at our intake, and I put that in quotes because maybe it's not a good word because it sounds scary. It's really talk story. It can involve pizza. What matters is to be tight but loose and have a rigorous process, but also just allow faculty to light up their brains. Sometimes it takes 15, 20 minutes for faculty to really see their place in the dialogue. And I can't tell you the number of meetings I've had where faculty say, oh no, that's not me, I don't have anything to do with that. And then 20 minutes later, their brain lights up and they go, oh, I get what I want to teach. So creating the space for that peer-to-peer mentoring on sustainability. I really like there to be an in-person interdisciplinary dialogue as part of the process. We ask faculty to add a course level learning outcome, and we researched these statements pretty exhaustively, and we give them these learning outcome statements. They're also welcome to craft their own. They add it to their existing course learning outcomes. And then we're working to tie these to those synthesized essential outcomes that Arnhem Wieck identified: systems thinking competence, normative competence, anticipatory competence, strategic competence, and interpersonal competence, or what we kind of look at as systems thinking, strategic thinking, collaborative thinking, future thinking, and value thinking. We're getting ready to pilot our first SALG tool. So if you've never heard of the SALG, this is a really well-researched tool for documenting student assessment of their own learning gains. It's very easy to use and is quite well documented in terms of its efficacy for assessing how students feel about what they've learned. And the students' measure of what they've learned actually is pretty well correlated with what they actually learned. So I think the SALG tool is going to be really effective for our sustainability learning assessments. SALG is developed through Sensor, which is Science Education for New Civic Engagements and Responsibilities. So if you're working in sustainability curriculum and not working yet with Sensor, find the nearest Sensor people because they're awesome. Hawaii was recently named the first Sensor model state, and this is that video I mentioned that talks about this sort of multi-level, multi-campus interaction, which is what that model state designation is all about. And our S designation, I think, plays a big part in how we work with our Sensor designation. Put your sustainability curriculum goals into your strategic plan, and then the S designation gives you a way to get there, right? We need to play this kind of numbers game so that we can keep track of progress that we make in this transformation across the curriculum. So in 2011, this is that F4 strategic plan item I mentioned. You know, we had this kind of fuzzy goal to increase, and then it was increased to 45. This is for Kapiolani Community College. And then our current strategic plan goal, now we can say 27 to 60, and then we added the pathways to four-year campuses. So the S designation allows your strategic planning language to become more precise and thus more measurable. So a little recap: to obtain our sustainability designation, faculty include a learning outcome, a core concept of sustainability, some type of active pedagogy. They talk with us about their disciplinary perspective and what sustainability means through their disciplinary lens. And then they just describe their assignments and materials. And sometimes that sharing and the kind of two-way development of different assignments is a really exciting part of the intake. Sometimes faculty don't understand why we have these core concepts right away. These have been also pretty stable since about 2008. They originally came from a book called Surfing Tsunamis of Change, which was written by Shauna Trivena, who was at the time a graduate student doing a lot of sustainability work in the UH system. Whoops. faculty might not see themselves in these core concepts immediately, but it's much more productive to talk about core concepts than, you know, trees or water or food. The core concepts help us talk about trees, water, or food. And if you break them down, almost everything will begin to connect here into at least one of these core concepts. And we meet regularly and kind of update the language. And we feel that these concepts represent the global dialogue on sustainability. And there's many ways, again, that sustainability changes not just what you're teaching, but how you teach your course. So it's really important to include some way for faculty to think about their pedagogy and how it also evolves into an S designation. So some final points. I want to emphasize that the S designation should always be an opt-in program. It's just a way to shine a light on what's happening in the classroom and for faculty to just raise their hand and say, hey, I'm teaching this, and I want students to know I'm teaching it, and I want my colleagues to help me teach this better so that we can work together and transform our institutional brain. It doesn't change the official course outline, so it doesn't have to be a formal curriculum review. Our S designation has been largely at the section level, adding a focus or one assignment. The purpose of the designation is to benchmark curricular transformation and make it more visible to students. Some of the benefits are the unseen benefits, which are the satisfaction for faculty in having that interdisciplinary dialogue and the way it helps us teach together. We're each teaching a little piece, a little node of this new brain that we're building for students. Sustainability, the deeper you get into it, the more complex it is. And it's not something students can just get in one class and be equipped. They're getting a little piece from each of us. And so developing that curricular coherence. What really makes it work, what catalyzes the whole mix, is campus and community engagement. And of course, what really makes it work is doing it with students, designing courses and curriculum and community engagement and campus engagement with students. It's because they're the ones who are really creating this future. So that was 1 hour download of pretty much everything I think about as I go through the sort of day-to-day process of implementing a system-wide sustainability designation. So thank you for letting me just share all of that, because it's always in my head. I love to talk about it. I love to work with any of you and hear what you're doing. And if we have time and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those questions now. Thank you so much, Jess and Ira, for bringing faculty together to have these conversations.
Now, our thanks to you, Krista, for an outstanding presentation. Lots of good stuff in your slides. There are several slides that I think could be a freestanding webinar in itself. So lots more to talk about.
I'm sorry if it's too much. I just wanted to give it all.
A great overview, and lots of food for thought and further discussion. There are some questions that have started to come in, and I would add welcome to those of you who have joined the webinar in progress. I know that Jess has some questions ready as a follow-up for you, so let's start with Jess Carrier.
Thanks, Ira. And yes, thank you, Krista. Great. So one question I have for you is, what has, I imagine that there's been some resistance, lots of people on board and ready to go for sure, but there's sure to be some resistance in places as well. So what does that look like? Where does it come from? And how have you responded to some of that resistance or that pushback?
Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, one of the most common kind of pushback things that I've gotten is, well, why isn't it a requirement? Why don't we have an environmental studies requirement? And, you know, if it's not required, then it's not going to be even worth it. And that's just a different use of energy. Like I decided early on that like pushing for a first-year requirement in sustainability, one is just too much administrative, organizational resistance to do, and two, there's this, you know, alphabet soup kind of resistance that students have all these requirements and writing intensive and global perspectives, all these different perspectives. So one resistance is that, is like, well, it should just be a requirement. Like, it doesn't really mean anything. Why should I bother? Why would that be meaningful to me or to my students? And so that's what I try to address is you know, through stories about how faculty have used the designation to transform their own curriculum, and really emphasizing transformation and catalyzing a rapid diffusion of sustainability through the curriculum. You know, it's not about what does the designation do for my class, but what does it do for us as an institution for the coherent experience that students have? You know, what is my piece of that experience? So it's really about learning to think as a faculty community at a college or a system. And then also making it fun, making it easy. We have a Google form, and just giving faculty lots of chances to engage. We have little pizza work sessions. Oh, just come talk story about your course, have some pizza. And then they'll leave the room with like a whole new course design in their mind. So really just let faculty think, you know, give them some space, give them something to chew on. Introduce them to someone like Chip Fletcher or Albie Miles, or, you know, the expert on your campus. Give them something to chew on and let their vibrancy just take over. You know, that's what I try to do. And then also just circumventing faculty senates, curriculum committees, and all sorts of paperwork and bureaucracy wherever possible, to make it fun, easy, and as little effort. Like, that stuff is work for faculty. Teaching and course design is fun for faculty. So more fun, less work.
Great. Actually, that's a great segue into my next question is, can you describe some of those fun ways, some of the creative ways that faculty are having to integrate sustainability in their courses? And then maybe this is an attached question or a separate question, but how does that translate into what the students are perceiving about the S designation? You know, to what extent does it matter to them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, with the student perception, right now I'm reading final portfolios, and students write a reflective cover memo about the semester, and I'm really seeing how they are starting to see themselves as part of something. When they refer to the class, they were like, oh, well, when I took this class, I didn't know that it was an S designated class, but you know, now I see that I'm part of something, of a curricular effort, or a sort of hidden curriculum in a way. And the way they mention, oh, this was an S designated course, they're starting to see it starting to become more visible. At the beginning of the semester, I actually had a student change from one college to another because she saw a flyer that she could take an S designated English 100 as opposed to a regular section of English 100. And she actually came to a different campus just to take that course. So, you know, the students see it and they are interested in it. I also had one student who, I was reading her cover memo, and she said, honestly, if I had known this course was going to focus on climate change, I wouldn't have taken it. So there's also the sort of stealth approach. You don't want to only have those quadrant 2 students with the strong sustainability interest, but we want to develop curriculum that reaches students who aren't interested in sustainability, and that's why it's, you know, sustainability across the curriculum, hitting all areas of gen ed. So some of the different areas, I'm not going to flip back to that slide, but if you went back to that slide with the 206 courses, of course I didn't list all 206, but if you look at the list and think about each one representing the faculty work, it's just mind-blowing what faculty can think of. One of my favorite intakes was Chinese language, right? Chinese language and literature. Do you think that's going to be an S-related course? Of course not. But this faculty member started talking about the Emperor of China and this famous poem that emphasizes how each family must have their own mulberry tree and be able to produce their own silk and be self-sufficient, and that this was actually like a key aspect in Chinese culture and literature. And, you know, it's a sustainability-related course. That's an interesting piece of this big sustainability puzzle. It just completely blew my mind. We also have a course, Science of Sleep. It's an anatomy and physiology course. And I didn't see it at first, but the faculty member starts talking, and she was using a metaphor about the body system and what happens inside our bodies if we get worn down and don't have enough sleep, and how using the Earth system kind of as a metaphor helps students really understand the impact of sleep. And she actually sent me an email here toward the end of the semester, and she said, "Oh, thank you so much for listening to my ideas. This really engaged students, and it really helped them get the core concepts." And, you know, she was just really excited to be part of the sustainability designation. And, you know, I had tons of stories like that from like EMT faculty. We have a physics teacher, and it's just so much fun talking to all these smart people about what sustainability means in their discipline. And I've just really come to see that there's not an area, there's not an academic discipline that doesn't connect to this in some way.
So I'm going to ask you, Krista, a related set of 3 questions from the chat box. I know you discussed earlier and had one nice slide that recapped the process that your school went through, but for those who joined late and just as a refresher, the questions are, is the S designation an invention of your school? Do faculty go through a training or professional development program to learn how to become an S? And finally, did you start with the president's support or endorsement, or as an outsider?
Oh, great series of questions. I'll answer them backwards. The president's support actually has come last. Our effort started from the faculty. We've been, you know, really moving this for 8 years, really. Yeah, 8 years. So it really started out as faculty dialogue and conversation. And then in about 2011, when ASHE introduced the ASHE STARS tool, or at least that's when I was introduced to it, and that's where the designation came from. We didn't invent the idea of sustainability focused, 60% or more of the content, sustainability related, courses including sustainability. That is something we all have in common thanks to ASHE STARS. As just a little piece of like, well, how about we measure it this way? And then we took that piece, which is just one of like 100 moving pieces in the STARS system. We took that one piece and then designed a process around it. the process includes a committee that is teaching sustainability and has agreed to kind of be a peer-to-peer mentoring for other faculty. So the designation is, you know, conferred upon the section by other faculty who help you develop your curriculum and your courses. So the intake process itself becomes a type of training. We do, at Kapiolani Community College, we do have an annual 2-day institute on service and sustainability learning. I did do the ASHI leadership training in sustainability curriculum, and we I designed the institute right around that framework, which comes from Peggy Bartlett and Jeff Chase. Like, that's just awesome work. And we do have that institute, but then, you know, you just can't get all your faculty there, and you just can't pay them all to do the work. So a lot of it happens through the, you know, little small group, informal conversations, faculty to faculty training and professional development. You know, we're looking at things like industry certifications and what kind of additional training do faculty need to feel confident teaching sustainability. We've tried creating, you know, PowerPoints on energy or something like that. But it really kind of comes down to, again, just talking story with each other and sharing articles, sharing resources, sharing ideas, and giving faculty a little framework like core concepts or like those essential learning outcomes that Arnhem Veek synthesized. Having a little bit of framework like that, and then letting faculty do their own work. Yeah. So I think that touches on all three of those questions.
Thanks, Krista. Jess, did you have another question that Krista could use to offer some closing comments?
Sure. This is really great and inspiring direction that we're headed in here with this conversation. One of the questions I'm thinking of in the future is, you know, what does the S designation look like, you know, 5 years from now? You made a point earlier that it's hard to keep current within our disciplines when everything is changing so rapidly. So what thoughts do you have on the future of S designation?
Well, if we do a good job, we don't need the S designation. The S designation is a marker while we're in the middle of a paradigm shift. The S designation helps us keep track of how we're doing in an extremely complex transformation of what knowledge is, of what students need to know, habits of mind, attitudes, skills, and practices. You know, it's a marker to help us through the transformation. So what I would like is if we're able to make our S designation courses, which are embedded all throughout the Gen Ed sequence, no new requirement, students are getting this framework embedded in their general education, and it's able to add up to a certificate, something equivalent to a minor. And then what if we could set goals that said, you know, oh, 50%, 60%, 80% of all students are going to be able to pick up this minor in sustainability. And then they're taking that into all their degree programs, and they have this appropriate lens and framework, again, grounded in a localized place. They understand what's going on. Once we got to that point, then there would be a saturation, and then we can just drop the designation, because it would mean our curriculum was awesome and was transformed and was effectively equipping students for you know, this complex conditions that they're going to inherit.
Great, thank you so much. So with that, I'm going to close out the webinar for today. Thank you so much, Krista. I loved your introduction of the word, am I saying it right? Mauō?
Mauō.
Mauō. It's a great new word to end our year with, the perpetuation of well-being. So thank you. Just a couple of quick notes about, as I alluded to in the beginning of today's webinar, some plans coming up for Sustainability Curriculum Consortium and opportunities for you, our fellow colleagues. 3 themes that SCC has identified in the past couple of years working together are curriculum, pedagogy, and leadership. Certainly some overlap in those areas, but those are 3 streams in which we are planning through our strategic planning process, which we concluded earlier this semester, to deliver activities and opportunities for you. Also included in the strategic plan is a faculty event being planned for late spring 2017, so late May or early June. We'll have details forthcoming, so watch for those in our monthly updates. And this will be faculty focused around these 3 themes. You are warmly invited to join our planning committee if this is something that you would like to be part of. We do have a number of faculty on board so far. We'd love for you to join that committee. So get in touch with Sustainability Curriculum Consortium through our website or email. Second thing we'll be developing is our cohort model, our professional development community based around the cohort model. And the third is advising and supporting sustainability programs at the institutional level. SCC has developed a really impressive advisory council with skills, expertise, and resources that we know will be valuable to those institutions that are implementing some of these ideas from Krista's webinar and the many other webinars that SCC has offered over the past year. So SCC is prepared for that. I want to mention too, Krista talked about some of our colleagues at ASHE and some of the pioneers and leaders within the sustainability education field, and just say that SCC is a member organization of ASHE. If you would like to get in touch with us, you may use our website, curriculumforsustainability.org. You can email us, admin@curriculumforsustainability.org. And also mention that this webinar and other webinars will be available through the SCC's YouTube